It is the assurance that God's plan is better than anything we could ever create for ourselves. Though we may not see the entire path ahead, we can trust that each step, no matter how uncertain, is leading us towards something far greater than we could have imagined. So, it's also important to remember that embracing the unknown doesn't mean we are without fear. Fear is natural when we face something unfamiliar, when we find ourselves standing at the threshold of a new season. But the courage to step forward does not come from an absence of fear. It comes from the strength and peace that comes from knowing God is with us. Fear may whisper doubts and uncertainty, but faith allows us to walk through it, knowing that God has already prepared the way. In these times of transition, we are also reminded that God's timing is perfect. The unknown is not an accident. It is a part of His divine plan for our lives. It is not that He has forgotten us or that He has left us to navigate life on our own. Rather, He is leading us, step by step, into the next season with purpose and intention. What we see as uncertainty is in fact a season of preparation, a time when God is refining us, shaping us, and equipping us for the journey ahead. As we embrace the unknown, we are also invited to release our grip on the things of the past. We cannot move forward into a new season while holding tightly to the old. Just as a runner cannot win a race while constantly looking behind, so too must we let go of what has been in order to embrace what is to come. The unknown is not something to fear. It is something to embrace, knowing that with each step forward, we are growing, we are learning, and we are being led into the fullness of God's plan for our lives. There is a particular beauty in the timing of God, a timing that often seems strange to our human eyes but is, in fact, flawless in its execution. As people, we are conditioned by the ticking of clocks and the passing of seasons, governed by the expectations of deadlines and schedules. We tend to look at time as something we must control, something we can bend to our will if we try hard enough. Yet, when it comes to the divine orchestration of our lives, we quickly come to realize that time is not something that can be controlled, but something to be trusted. Divine timing operates on an entirely different level. It is not bound by the limits of human understanding or the constraints of our desires. It transcends our sense of urgency and impatience, weaving a story that unfolds exactly as it should, when it should. And though we may not always see it at first in hindsight, we can look back and recognize how perfectly God has aligned every moment of our journey. When we look at the story of our lives, we see that many of the most significant chapters began with a moment of waiting, a time when the events we desired or dreamed of seemed just out of reach. Perhaps it was a new job that seemed to elude us, a relationship that never seemed to blossom, or a dream that seemed too distant to ever be realized. In these seasons of waiting, it is easy to grow frustrated, to question whether we have been forgotten, or whether God is truly leading us towards something greater. But this in itself is part of God's divine timing, the process of developing patience, trust, and a deeper reliance on His perfect will. The waiting period is not a time of inactivity. Rather, it is a time of preparation. Just as a seed takes time to grow beneath the surface before it bursts forth with new life, so too does God work in us during times of waiting. He uses these moments to refine our character, to strengthen our faith, and to build in us the capacity to handle the blessings He is preparing for us. If we were to receive our desires too quickly, we would not be ready to fully appreciate or manage the gifts God intends to give us. And so in His wisdom, He waits, allowing the timing to unfold in such a way that when the moment arrives, we are fully prepared to receive. But patience is not simply about waiting, it is about how we wait. The temptation is often to become restless, to try to force things to happen, to push and strive toward the things we desire. Yet in doing so, we risk missing the very purpose of the waiting period itself. Patience, as God intends it, is not passive resignation, but an active surrender to His timing. It is an understanding that while we may not yet see the full picture, we trust that God does, and that His timing is always for our ultimate good. There is a peace that comes when we accept that God's timing is perfect. It allows us to release the anxiety and frustration that often accompany our desires. It reminds us that we do not have to scramble or manipulate circumstances to bring about the outcome we seek. God, in His infinite wisdom, is working all things together for our good, and His plan will unfold in the perfect moment, at the perfect time. Even when we cannot see what God is doing, we can trust that He is working behind the scenes. So, He is orchestrating the events of our lives in such a way that when the time is right, everything will fall into place. And while we may not always understand why things happen when they do, we can take comfort in knowing that God's timing is never random or haphazard. It is always intentional, always purposeful, and always designed to bring us closer to His perfect will for our lives. This is where true peace lies, in the acceptance of God's timing. We can choose to rest in the knowledge that He is in control, that He knows what is best for us, and that His timing will always be right. Our task is not to rush ahead, but to wait with expectation and patience, trusting that when the time is right, He will lead us into the new season of life that He has prepared. There is a curious thing about the human spirit. We desire control. It is woven deeply into our nature to seek autonomy, to manage our lives, and to ensure that things unfold according to our own design. We like to think that we are in charge, that we hold the reins, and that through our own efforts we can shape our future. This desire to control, while not inherently wrong, becomes a problem when it interferes with our ability to trust in God's perfect timing. When God leads us into a new season, He often calls us to let go of our need to control the unfolding of events. He invites us into a place of surrender, where we no longer try to manufacture the future with our own hands, but trust Him to lead us according to His will and purpose. This is one of the most difficult steps we can take because it requires us to relinquish our plans, our timelines, and our expectations, and to replace them with faith in His greater plan. Letting go of control doesn't mean abandoning our responsibilities or doing nothing. It means releasing the illusion that we can control every aspect of our lives, and instead trusting that God, in His wisdom, is guiding us toward what is best. The tension that arises when we try to maintain control is palpable. It feels as though we are standing in opposition to the very thing we desire most: peace, joy, and fulfillment. But in truth, it is only by surrendering control that we can experience the fullness of these blessings. As long as we cling to our own plans, we hold ourselves back from receiving what God has in store. The surrender of control requires faith. Faith that God knows what is best for us. Faith that He sees the entire picture when we can only see the part in front of us. It is not easy, particularly when we are in the midst of uncertainty or pain, but it is in those very moments that trust becomes most meaningful. Trust is not born out of calm seas, but out of the storm, when everything around us seems uncertain. It is in the letting go that we discover the peace that comes from knowing that we are not walking this journey alone. We are walking with a loving Father who has already prepared the way. To truly let go of control is to admit that we are not the masters of our own destiny, but rather stewards of a life that has been entrusted to us by the Creator. It is to acknowledge that we do not know the future, but He does. And though we may not always understand why things unfold in the way they do, we trust that His plans for us are good, plans to give us a future and a hope. In these moments of surrender, we are not simply yielding to the unknown. We are yielding to the One who knows the end from the beginning, who has been with us in every season, and who will continue to walk with us in the future. Letting go of control means releasing our grip on the outcomes and placing our trust in God's hands. It means saying, "And not my will, but yours be done." And in that surrender, we find the freedom to live fully, knowing that we are not bound by the constraints of our own limitations, but are free to follow the path He has laid before us. Letting go of control also frees us from the burdens of anxiety and worry. When we try to control everything, we carry a heavy load, one that was never meant for us to bear. But when we surrender, we lay down that burden at God's feet, trusting that He will carry us through, that He will guide us every step of the way. It is a paradox. In surrendering, we find strength. In letting go, we discover freedom. Trusting God's perfect timing means that we no longer need to force things to happen. We can release our grip on the outcome and rest in the knowledge that God is always working behind the scenes. The process may not always be immediate, but it will be worth it. God's plan for us is always better than the one we could have made for ourselves. By letting go of control, we open ourselves to the abundant life He desires to give us, When we trust in God's timing, we are stepping into the unknown with the assurance that what lies ahead is far greater than anything we could have orchestrated ourselves. It is in this trust that we experience true transformation, a change not just in our circumstances, but in our very hearts and minds. To step into the new season that God has prepared for us is not simply to embrace a change of environment or situation, but to embrace a deeper, more profound shift within ourselves. Transformation is often a quiet, gradual process. We may not notice the changes as they are happening, just as we do not notice the day-to-day growth of a tree. But when we look back over time, we begin to see the newness that God has brought into our lives, the way He has reshaped our understanding, refined our character, and renewed our perspective on renewal. This transformation is the work of God, who has been molding and shaping us through every season, preparing us for the new chapter He is leading us into. It is important to realize that the new season God is leading us into is not merely a change in circumstances, it is a change in how we see those circumstances. It is the transformation of our mindset from one that focuses on the obstacles and difficulties to one that sees opportunities for growth, for learning, and for deeper dependence on God. The new season is not a time to look back with regret or longing, but a time to look forward with hope and expectation, knowing that God is with us every step of the way. This transformation also requires us to let go of the old mindset, the old ways of thinking, and the old patterns of behavior that no longer serve us. It is easy to fall into the trap of thinking that the same strategies that worked in the past will work in the future, but when God is leading us into something new, He is often calling us to do things differently. He is stretching us, expanding our vision, and teaching us to see things from His perspective. The old ways of reacting, of handling situations, and of thinking about ourselves and the world must be replaced with a new vision, one that is rooted in the understanding that God is sovereign, that He is leading us, and that His ways are higher than ours. Zophar. Stepping into the new also requires a willingness to be uncomfortable. Change, while often necessary, is rarely comfortable. It requires us to move out of our comfort zones, to take risks, and to trust that God will provide the strength and courage we need to navigate the unknown. But it is precisely in this discomfort that we experience the deepest growth. It is in these moments of uncertainty that our faith is strengthened, our trust in God deepens, and our character is refined. God does not lead us into new seasons of life simply for the sake of change. Every transition, every shift in our circumstances is an opportunity for growth and transformation. When we step into the new with God's guidance, we are not just stepping into a new chapter of our external story, we are stepping into a new chapter of our internal journey. We are becoming the people God always intended us to be, equipped to fulfill His purpose for our lives in ways we could not have imagined. The beauty of stepping into the new season with God is that we are not doing it alone. We are walking with the one who knows the way, who has already gone before us and who will guide us every step of the way. The transformation that takes place is not just about us. It is about God working in and through us to bring about His will. The new season is a chance to step into a greater understanding of His love, His purpose, and His plans for our lives. And as we step into the new, we are transformed into the people we were always meant to be. People who trust in God's timing, who embrace His plan, and who are ready to live fully in the new season He has prepared. As we stand at the threshold of a new season, it is crucial to understand that the journey we are on is not one of mere chance or random events. God is leading us with intention and purpose, guiding us step by step into a future that is beyond anything we could have imagined for ourselves. The transitions we face are not interruptions to our lives, but a continuation of His divine plan, intricately woven into the fabric of our story. We are often tempted to measure success and progress by the immediate results we see, by the milestones that align with our expectations. But God's timing operates on a far deeper level, one that transcends the limitations of our human understanding. Each season, each moment of waiting, each challenge we face is preparing us for what lies ahead. And though we may not always see it in the moment, we can trust that God is making us ready for the breakthroughs, the blessings, and the transformations that await. Trusting in God's timing requires a profound surrender. It means letting go of our need to control, our need to understand, and our need to rush. It is in this surrender that we find true peace, the kind of peace that allows us to rest in the knowledge that God is not just aware of our needs, but that He is actively working in every detail of our lives. The timing may not always make sense to us, but we can take comfort in knowing that His timing is always right. The new season that God is leading us into will not necessarily be easy, but it will be good. The beauty of God's guidance is that it doesn't require us to be perfect. He doesn't ask us to figure everything out on our own. Rather, He invites us to trust Him, to trust that His plan is greater than anything we could create for ourselves, and that His timing is flawless. When we step into this new season, we are not just stepping into an external change. We are stepping into a transformation of the heart, a deeper understanding of who we are and who God is, and a renewed sense of purpose that will guide us for the rest of our lives, of our lives. As we move forward, we can hold on to the assurance that God is replacing our losses with greater blessings. Every hardship, every disappointment, every moment of waiting is part of the process. The losses we have experienced are not the end of our story, but the very place where God's greater blessings will unfold. He is preparing us for something far greater than we could have hoped for or imagined. We can also find peace in knowing that, in His time, God will lead us into the season of life that we are meant to experience. He will guide us through the uncertainties, the fears, and the doubts, leading us into a place of transformation. Trusting in His timing doesn't mean that we are passive or complacent. It means that we are actively surrendering to His plan, allowing Him to shape and mold us as we step forward in faith. In the end, our journey is not about arriving at a destination, but about growing along the way. Each step, each season, each challenge, and each triumph is part of the divine process that God is working in our lives. And when we trust in His timing, we can be certain that we are not walking alone. God is with us, guiding us, preparing us, and leading us into the future He has designed. The new season of life is not something to fear. It is something to embrace with open arms, knowing that it is part of the greater story He is writing for us. So let us step forward with confidence, with trust, and with patience, knowing that God is leading us into the next chapter of our lives. We do not need to know all the details. We only need to trust the one who holds the future. And as we trust Him, we will discover that every moment of waiting, every step of transformation, and every act of surrender has brought us closer to the person we were always meant to be. The process, though it may seem long or difficult at times, is one of divine perfection. It is the process that leads us not just to new opportunities, but to a deeper relationship with God. Trusting the timing is trusting the process, and in the process we are being transformed into the likeness of Christ, ready to step into the fullness of the life He has prepared for us.